The winter that year felt heavier than any before, thick, silent, and cold enough that it seemed to seep into the bones of the town itself. Snow didn't fall gently, it slammed against windows, piled on rooftops, and swallowed sound. And in the middle of that vast December quiet, I stood inside the small community center dressed in a red velvet Santa suit, wondering why the season of joy felt so painfully empty. Then she walked in, trembling, eyes glossy, holding her coat tight around her as though the whole world had given her too many reasons to hide. And when she stepped close to me, voice quivering with the weight of a breaking heart, she whispered, "Santa, I don't want to spend Christmas alone." Something inside me cracked. I didn't know her yet, but I knew loneliness far too well. So I leaned down, trying to sound cheerful, though my own heart felt shaken, and said softly, "Santa has already noted it. If you believe kindness and second chances still matter in this world, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps keep stories like this alive." Her name was Alina, though she didn't say it that night. She just moved away from the line of children waiting for Santa and sat near the corner of the hall, where the lights were dimmer and the decorations looked a little wilted. I watched her from a distance while smiling for pictures, but every few minutes my gaze drifted toward her. There was something haunting in the way her hands trembled, something fragile in how she kept looking toward the door, as if waiting for someone who would never arrive. When the event ended, and families hurried home laughing in clusters of warmth, she remained seated alone. I walked toward her, still in costume, and sat across from her, the cheap beard itching my chin. She didn't look up at first, only exhaled in a way that sounded more like surrender than breath. Eventually, she told me the story she had been holding inside her chest like a locked box. She had moved to the town only a month earlier after her mother's passing, and Christmas had always been their tradition. Movies, handmade decorations, midnight cocoa, and laughter that filled every corner of their house. Now, for the first time in her life, she had no one. No siblings, no close friends, no familiar faces. Just a small apartment that still smelled faintly of paint and emptiness. She said she came to the community event not for the festivities, but because she hoped sitting among families might make the loneliness feel less sharp. But instead, it made her realize just how deeply alone she was. Her words stayed with me long after she left that night. I removed the Santa suit, folded it neatly into the storage box, and sat in the empty hall for a long time. I understood her pain more than she knew. 2 years earlier, after losing my own younger brother during Christmas, I had stopped celebrating the holiday entirely. I volunteered as Santa each year only to distract myself, to avoid going home to a silent living room where his laughter no longer echoed. Grief has a way of reshaping people, quietly, ruthlessly, and I recognized the same hollow ache in her eyes that lived in mine. Over the next few days, the memory of her voice, trembling and fragile, kept tugging at me. I didn't know her name or number, only her lonely silhouette walking away into the snowy night. So I asked around the community center, and eventually, someone remembered the new girl who had recently rented the small apartment above the florist's shop. I debated whether reaching out would be strange, but something inside me insisted that loneliness should never be ignored when you have the power to soften it. It was December 23rd when I finally gathered enough courage to knock on her door. She looked surprised, hesitant, guarded, but when I explained who I was, her expression softened. We talked for a few minutes in the hallway before she invited me inside. The apartment was nearly bare. A small tree stood in the corner, undecorated except for a single ornament that looked handmade, probably from her childhood. She quickly brushed away the embarrassment with a forced smile, saying she hadn't had time to decorate. But the truth sat between us. She just couldn't bring herself to do it alone. That night we talked for hours. Her grief poured out in slow, trembling waves, and I shared mine in return. There was something healing about the honesty, something warming about being in the presence of someone who didn't try to hide their wounds. Before I left, I promised to visit again the next day, Christmas Eve. She nodded, trying to hide a smile that looked shy but hopeful. Christmas Eve arrived with gentle snowfall, the soft kind that floats instead of falls. I showed up to her apartment carrying a box of decorations, 2 cups of cocoa, and the courage to step into something new. We decorated the little tree together, stringing lights and hanging ornaments one by one. At some point, she laughed, soft at first, then louder. It was the kind of sound that made my chest ache with something warm and unfamiliar. We watched a movie afterward, sitting side by side on the couch, sharing stories of the people we had lost and the memories we still held close. In that tiny apartment, with dim lights and the faint sound of snowfall outside, something inside both of us quietly began to heal. On Christmas morning, we cooked breakfast together, burnt pancakes, lopsided eggs, and endless laughter. The world outside was still cold, but inside that little apartment, everything felt warmer than it had in years. She looked at me across the small table, eyes soft and shimmering, and whispered that this was the first Christmas since her mother's passing that didn't hurt quite as much. I felt the same about my brother. Somehow, without planning it, we had filled a void in each other's lives that we didn't even know could be filled. As the day came to a close, she looked out the window at the quiet street below and said she never expected a stranger dressed as Santa to become her first real friend in a new town. I smiled and told her that sometimes life sends us exactly who we need, exactly when we need them, and maybe, just maybe, answering her wish that night wasn't just for her, it was for me too. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support means more than you know. Before you go, drop a comment. What does Christmas mean to you? By the time the lights dimmed and the night settled around us, it no longer felt like two lonely souls trying to survive the holidays. It felt like hope, quiet, gentle, and real.